In today's video, I'd like to talk about what it's actually like to be out here in mountains of Silverton and Uray and actually go, off-roading and that kind of stuff. So I should prefix this video by stating the obvious that prior to having come here, I have spent basically 6 weeks of my life in Moab. And that whole stretch between the Mexican Head area and obviously the Moab itself. So I have started my trip in Utah in Mexican Head, Valley of Gods, Johns Canyon, Gooseneck State Park. Found myself going to Needles District of Canyonlands National Park. And then basically moved further to Moab itself and stayed majority of the time there. So, have I not done that, my perspective of being out here in Colorado would have been completely different. Okay, because being in Moab, I basically elevated the plank of how I judge things. Okay, so to give some insight on that, way back in 2013, by the way, we travel as a family, we travel a lot, okay, just a lot, we've been up and down the eastern coast and, through the world and then some. So for us, one of the most defining moments was in 2013 when we went to Yellowstone National Park in the Grand Tetons. And what that have done was actually spoiled the rest of everything else for us, because we found ourselves quite often saying things like, well, that was pretty cool, but not as good as Yellowstone, or something along the lines. That was kind of the benchmark for like the wow factor. Okay, it's very difficult to start off high and then, okay, so for me, my main priority on this crazy idea of mine was to spend as much time as I could in Utah. And it pains me to no end that I had to leave prematurely. So I have come to Colorado on the heels of not wanting to come here this early. Now, the consequence of obviously coming here early is the fact that a lot of trails were closed. And as I'm, sitting here waiting for the trails to open up and everything like that, it has been an experience. I'm happy to say that at this point, I'm on track to basically accomplish everything that I want. That being said, there's this inconvenient aspect of the fact that according to the new itinerary, I'm supposed to be here for 6 weeks. So I've already been here for a week, 5 more to go, and basically I don't have 5 weeks of wheeling in this place. And so, part of my process on top of that is also the housing situation, because, I have to move. And I have to stay connected to the internet, so that I could work. Right, so there's that. So here I was procrastinating on what to do, right, while also wheeling. Not without issues. One specifically I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. But my hand is being forced by a completely different, immovable entity. In this particular case, it's the weather. Now, if I pan the camera this way, you could see how everything is gray and gloomy. Well, the weather forecast for the next at least 10 days is just absolutely horrible. what they're saying is it's like 40 to 50% chance of rain. The temperature is going to drop to 62 high. Now, what that means is that when the highs here drop, so does everything else. Meaning, and when it's supposed to rain, it also means a lot of other things. So something that I've already had to interact with is the fact that if it drizzles, it also snows and sleets and hails, and there's like 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts, bone chilling cold up on the peaks where I'm supposed to be wheeling. So yes, it's honestly, that's another variable I haven't thought about, because here I was like, okay, well, what do I do in 14 days after my camp stay expires? Where do I go? Things could change between now and then. So on to the actual wheeling. So I've already had somewhat of a casualty. It happened in the most inopportune moment. I am blessed that it worked out in the end, but it was not an experience I ever care to go through again. So if I pan the camera again, there's let me see if I could, this peak over there, okay? It's called Kendall Mountain right there behind those trees. It's a tall one. And basically to get there, you start the trail in Silverton, and then you start doing the switchbacks up the mountain, and then you parallel a $1 million highway on the other side of the ravine, and then you kind of go up again and start doing switchbacks, and then you turn, and eventually you find yourself in this basin. It has Kendall Mountain on one side and that whole system of peaks, and to get there you essentially go up. Right now the grade on that entire trail is very steep, which is a pain going up, but going down I cooked my brakes. You know how fun it is to have to come down the mountain with no brakes at all? Basically what happened was my brakes overheated. Toyota Tacoma doesn't really have an engine braking system. It has engine brake assist or something along those lines, which is absolutely useless for off-road. Doesn't matter what you do, like I have SR5 Toyota Tacoma. It doesn't have, and even like there's another Toyota Tacoma that just drove by, the TRD Off-Road. I know those have like downhill assists and crawl control, but I think it's also based on the brakes. So if your brakes are done, well, so is all the other stuff. So basically I had to ride my emergency brake all the way down the hill. And that's kind of the reality of wheeling here in Colorado. What goes up must come down. And if you don't have something as critical as brakes, well, you're SOL, aren't you? The trails here are... I'm not quite sure what to make of them, okay? Because, like, I'm coming from Moab. I'm coming from Utah, where it's hard rock, nothing moves. The sandstone is like sandpaper. You have incredible amount of grip. The obstacles there, I mean, yes, they're challenging, but it's more to do with the capability of your vehicle to do certain things rather than your skill or anything like that. Here in Colorado, it's completely different. You have absolutely no grip. Every single trail consists of water that runs through it a whole bunch of times, loose gravel and rock which moves going up or going down, lots of sand. It's very dusty. Oh my god. The trail system is very poorly marked. Okay, now don't get me wrong, there's signage that says, hey, this is the trail, right? But it doesn't tell you, hey, if you take this trail, you're gonna be in over your head. And all the materials that are in existence, you know, they're based on this abstract idea of what the trail should be, not what the trail actually is. It doesn't get revised based on difficulty, based on trail conditions. So, for reference, when I was doing Mineral Creek, okay, it's rated as anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5. I haven't seen any 2.5 in there. All from the beginning to the end of the trail, it is easily 3.5, pushing 4. If anything, I'm willing to wager that the cliffhanger, which is also known as Amasa in Moab, is easier to a great extent than the Mineral Creek. Skip a couple of obstacles. But it's tough. It's tough. And one of the things that you also have to keep in mind is Colorado is an area where, and I haven't seen that in Utah. I don't know whether that's because I've arrived after they all left, or whether it's just because Utah is so big that that's really not that big of an issue. Here in Colorado, one of the things I have encountered so far is that there's a lot of groups that like to go. Okay, there would be like a jeeping group consisting of like 50 jeeps, a side-by-side group consisting of like 30 side-by-sides, you know, utility vehicle, you know, those like garden type variety, you know, there would be like 5 or 6 of them, right? So the challenge is that when you're on the trail and you have to let somebody by, well, you're not letting by one person, you're letting by like 50. So there's time and time again I've encountered where I had to physically sit there for like 15 minutes trying to let all of them pass. Which, you know, if you find yourself on the edge of the cliff, really isn't all that comforting either, you know. And another thing is, because there's so many groups in here, they erode trails with, I can't even, like, if you so happen to drive right behind them, it's almost a guarantee that they're going to destroy the trail. A trail that's rated a 1 after a group of 50 is going to be rated like a 3 at least. I'm not okay with that. I think something needs to be done. Now, there's this weird thing. Silverton has been in the news lately for all sorts of reasons, politically driven and otherwise. So I'm foregoing the whole politics issue that happened. Not a day that goes by that Silverton just finds a new way to. You just go like, oh my lord, oh. So, alright, I'll skip the politics. Silverton, in their infinite wisdom, have decided to ban OHVs out of its city. Now, if you don't know what OHV is, that would be side-by-side, sport utilities, ATVs, basically, I would say 80% of the target demographic of tourism that keeps their fine little town afloat. I would say for every one 4x4 Jeep or truck or an SUV, there's probably like 8 side-by-sides. Okay, and so Silverton has voted, at least at the time of me writing this, it's been somewhat postponed, but it has been voted on. Basically postponed until the end of summer or something. Like they have a sign in there. I'm not even gonna talk about it. But basically what they decided to do, they decided to ban OHVs from Silverton, right? So that's going to impact RV campgrounds because people come there with RVs and side-by-sides. That's going to impact the stores because people drive there on side-by-sides and essentially shop at the stores, restaurants and pubs and bars and all of that. Okay, it's going to absolutely ruin the tourist sector. Now, you might say, well, okay, well, maybe they banned side-by-sides in the town, but, you know, people could still... No, they can't. You can't drive your side-by-side to the trail. Reason being is because I would say just by being here, you know, all this time, probably 95% of places around Silverton area have signage that says no OHV staging, no parking of trailers, no parking of RVs, no parking of any kind, not allowed to park on the shoulder, not allowed to basically... So what they've done is they've created this mechanism by which they're literally banning off-roaders from coming to Silverton. Now, Silverton is basically known for off-roads, right? Because a whole bunch of them start from Silverton. What that's gonna do to the trails, I don't know. Maybe it will have a positive impact. Maybe without all them side-by-sides, it's gonna be easier. But then again, it's not just the side-by-sides that are causing all sorts of havoc to the trails. You know, unfortunately, here's another little factoid. There's a whole bunch of people with Subarus, out of all things, that are riding on the high clearance 4x4 required trails. You have no idea how many Subarus I've seen in the peaks. Right? So I confronted one guy. I'm like, the last thing I've, you know, expected to see here was a Subaru. And he's like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, I was just stuck behind you for 15 minutes, watching you destroy the trail as you're trying to scramble up to the top. He's like, but I made it to the top, didn't I? I'm like, do you not see the trail behind you? You just completely rutted out the trail, making it borderline impossible to pass for anybody, even with a high clearance 4x4. He's like, well, I don't have another vehicle. I'm like, well, you should have rented a Jeep maybe, you know? But the thing is, like, that sort of hoonery is not enforced here in Silverton. It's just not, right? There's no kind of enforcement. So, for example, there would be speed limits posted, you know, like from Animas Forks to Silverton area, and the speed limit is 20 miles an hour. Well, today I was passed by 2 motorcyclists on off-road, you know, dirt bikes, plus a Jeep Gladiator, which is their truck, you know, version. They were going like 60 miles an hour, right? And the only cop in town is about 73 years old, who drives by here every single day on his little SUV with his toothless sidekick that has nothing else to do, who is not even a cop. I mean, that 73-year-old, bless his heart, I mean, he's not going to be able to enforce anything, right? So that's what it's like wheeling out here. You know, there's challenges, you know. Oh, or here's another thing. If you break, there's no car mechanics out here. Like the car mechanic that I went to this morning, right, to see about my brakes, his working hours are between 9 and 4, right? He's the only mechanic in town, the only one, right? And so this is what he does. He opens up the shop, and like 5 minutes into opening of the shop, somebody is stranded on the mountain. So you know what he does? He gets into his vehicle and starts driving up the mountain. right? It's like, dude, what about the rest of us, right? I would say Silverton is just going out of its way to make wheeling here just as unappealing as humanly possible. Like, I would expect to see, you know, 4x4 off-road shops and all sorts of, repair facilities and nah. So the wheeling season is actually quite short-lived here. The trails are open only for a couple of months out of the entire year. Obviously, this is Colorado after all. It snows and, they don't clear all of the roads and block roads that they don't feel like clearing. So, on that respect, even if you're here like I am right now, I can't do trails like Imogen and Black Bear because they're closed, right? Here's another one. I can't go riding this road that passes right behind me. It takes you to something called Clear Lake, I think Island Lake and Blue Lake or something along those lines, right? They closed it for the entirety of the year because apparently they had a wildfire last year, right? So because they had a wildfire in one area, the rest of us can't access everything else that's in that area. So don't be surprised when you pull up somewhere and the road is just blocked. They gated, shut. You can't navigably pass through it. If trails open, they'll open like a portion of it, but not the other portion. That's kind of it. So maybe towards like August, everything eventually opens up, but I'm not here in August, so there's that. I think come end of this week, I will more or less have done everything here that I care to do, with exception of the Black Bear Pass and the Imogen, which are supposed to be opening up sometime in July. And then I don't know what I'm gonna do, honestly, because there's only so many times you could do the trail. Like, for example, the Corkscrew Gulch, I've already done like 4 times. Animas Forks, I've already driven, I don't know, like 6 or 8 times. And here's another little tidbit. Today I went to a couple of more trails called Maggie Gulch and Mini Gulch or something like that, right? And so it takes you about an hour each way. And it was kind of like, right? So you're wasting your time going on trails that are like, whereas, and you don't know until you get on the trail. I would say difficulty-wise, majority of the trails here are actually quite easy. It's, some of that challenge comes on, for like hardcore users, right? And that kind of boomerangs back. Like, for example, the Mineral Creek Trail that I've done, right? In every single video up until 7 months ago, Mineral Creek is basically a glorified, easy peasy 2.0 rated trail at most, right? Well, that's not what it looks like right now. It's completely rotted out. It's completely, it is tough. It's a tough, off-roading wheeling trail. It's not meant for novices. Whether you're going up or down, it's equally challenging. I've only done it one way, going up. But again, there's a reason why it's so rotted out, is because there's groups of people that come here and they all push each other and push the boundaries and start moving rocks and start, like the day when I was supposed to do the trail the first time and failed, they had, I don't know, like 25 or 30 Jeeps just lined up just to get in there, all on big tires and all super duper equipped. And By the way, I'm not harping on Jeeps because I'm gonna be buying one myself. But I'm just using them as an example of just how easy it is to take a trail that just opens up and just completely make it impassable for an average person. You know, while on the trail, I've met a whole bunch of people who frantically said, "How far till the end? How far till the end? We didn't expect it to be this hard." You know why? Because in the manuals, it doesn't list it being this hard. Because it's not. You know, the last video that I've seen, dated 7 months ago, it's an easy, well, with a couple of obstacles trail, right? Certainly not what I've driven. So all this wheeling comes with its challenges. You know, like for me yesterday, coming down Kendall Mountain without brakes, it's terrifying. 3,000 vertical foot change to the bottom. The trail is probably about 5 miles or so. So think doing 5 miles down the hill with steep incline without brakes. So if you do plan to come out here to Colorado, come prepared, because you're not gonna get much help over here. And you know, as time goes by, it's probably gonna be even less, you know, less welcoming, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of the state of wheeling and jeeping and off-roading in this neck of the woods. I have like this week, I'm gonna be basically putting my final drive around Silverton. After that, the only 3 left would be Yankee Basin, which is north of Ouray, Imogen, which goes from Ouray to Telluride, and then the Black Bear, which goes from between Ouray and Silverton to Telluride as well. So I'm gonna keep an eye on this weather and see what it does. I wouldn't discount packing up and leaving for a couple of weeks. Basically letting the trails kind of reopen. But the thing is, I'm so far away from like my backup options. I know it's gonna be a little bit cooler in Utah, but all the areas that are close to me, I've already done. So yeah. Alright, well, tomorrow's another day. So I'll see you tomorrow.